Hi there friends, welcome back to another video on paying it forward. Yesterday marked my 10-year anniversary with Microsoft, which was pretty fun, and also 10,000 views on the channel. I couldn't really believe it, to be honest with you, having started this in August. But I'm hoping this video in particular will give many more views, given it's built off of my most popular video and a question that came up recently and something which became a bit of a head scratcher and took me a bit longer to figure out than I'd initially hoped for. But the question is like, when you are returning Azure DevOps information inside of Power BI, sometimes some of the fields don't actually show up, like the description field or the latest comment or the acceptance criteria. And one of the things that all these fields have in common, that you'll see when we get into it, is that they're all actually rich text fields, which mean they render differently to some of the other fields, which may otherwise be like plain text. So the challenge that I took on was, how can you dynamically return that alongside the existing data that you're pulling from your existing, let's say, OData query that you'd use to return information from Azure DevOps, and how can you then enrich it with information like the description, the acceptance criteria, and other rich text fields that you may want to use. So fortunately, after a couple of weeks of kind of working through this one, we got there, and I think what's better to do than to jump straight into it. Let's do it. All right, so we're all familiar, I would say, with Power BI. But let's start by just getting the existing data from my Azure DevOps project. And we're going to use the OData query like we did in the previous video for this. So we're going to hit the OData feed. And then I have a OneNote here, a notepad with the existing structure, which I got from my previous video. And then I'm just going to go over to my Azure DevOps project organization. You can see I've got the org and the project here. And I'm just going to take those and basically bring them over into the structure of the OData query. So we're just going to come over here, make the updates in here. Okay, tidy it up. So you can see the structure here is that we have, just to kind of make it clear that we have the structure of the call that we're going to do. So we're going to open this up, and I'm just going to make it a little bit wider so you can see the preview a bit more easily. And as you go into the work items, you'll probably notice already you can't see any of the rich text fields. So what you can see here, for example, is the user story, the title, and the work item type, and some other key details. But if I actually come in here to this user story 1, which is ID number 3, you can see I've got like a description, some acceptance criteria, and I can't access that. So the question is like, how can I dynamically access that? So we're going to work on that today, which is exciting. So I'm going to select the work items because I want to load those first. As I've mentioned in the past, it's always a good idea to transform the data. Let's bring this back over here. All right, so I've just left the work item ID, the title, the work item type, and the state. Is what we want to have for now. And so now we have this, I was asking the question is like, how do I get the description for the file? So what I'm going to do is I went and searched for it, and I found online this great little example here on the Power BI forum. And it basically had this query here that I saw. So let's give this one a go. So you'll see if I bring this over into Power BI, this one here, and I go here, new source, blank query, and then I go to the advanced editor and I basically put it in like this. You'll see it gives you kind of some options to populate here. So we're going to do that again. We're going to take the organization and the project, and you can see this is work item number 3. Okay, and then we're going to change the ID to number 3. Okay, and as you can see very quickly, it generates it here, and you can see I now have the description, and I also have the acceptance criteria. So the question is like, how do you get this to look right? So there's a couple of transform steps that you need to work on. So first thing we're going to do is transpose it. So we're going to turn it from this way around into this way around. I don't know the best way to put it. We're going to transpose it. And we also want to then take the first rows as headers. And then you'll see we're kind of close to what we need. But if I now go across to the column where I get the the description, and I click on it, you can see down here at the bottom, if I put the text, just make it a bit bigger. I don't think I can do that, but we'll just zoom in a little bit so you can see it. You get a lot of this HTML stuff going on within it. And if you're rendering that, like if we just, let's say, save this, okay, and we build a visual, we've got the title, the work item ID, the type and the state, and then over here we're going to bring the description. You'll see it doesn't look very nice, to say the least. So how do we go and make this description look correct? So in other words, turn it from HTML into plain text. So there's an approach that you can take to do that. So what we're going to do is come back to the query. We're going to add a column, a custom column like this, and then we're going to use this formula inside of here. So I'm just going to put description plain text. All right. And then in here, I'm going to go, and I've got this already saved from earlier, there's a little structure here that you can do, which is html.table. And we can actually write it out together, and then you'll see that you then have the option to pick where it is. So we basically want the system, if I can spell it right, .description field. And sometimes it will do this weird rendering thing, so make sure that you pick it out correctly. Then you want to have a comma, and then you open what I call the squiggly brackets twice, and then we're going to put in text with a comma, and then no spaces. Is that a comma? Yeah, it is. And then we're going to type in this one here, colon, and then root, like that. And then we're going to tidy it up, and then close the brackets. And you can see we don't have any syntax issues. So we're going to add a column over here, and what you'll see is, maybe you can see this here, you get this new, let's say, column, but it has this weird squiggly arrow thing at the top there. And what we're going to do is hit that, and then what you'll see is it expands that table, based on the information that's available within it. And you can see there's then a text option here, and as you can see now, we've got the plain text back for that. So if we quickly close and apply it, all right, so we have the plain text description, and we swap that out, you'll see we now have a much cleaner experience for getting the description. So this is pretty cool, right? Not too bad. You can then do the same for the acceptance criteria, which for those of you with a sharp eye, you would have seen was obviously in the original query as well, which is over here. Acceptance criteria. You need to make sure that when you're building that custom column, that you refer to the column correctly, otherwise it won't work or it will break. But as those of you who probably know already, this is good if you're only referring to one work item. The question for me, and this is where I would say the challenge came, was how do I do this dynamically? And when we say dynamically, I mean like how do we iteratively do this so that we can apply it to every work item that we have in that list. So when we have this list of work items that we've got here, how can we, rather than do it in a separate table, how can we add it as a column within this table? And this was where my area of learning really grew, I will say it like that, is into using functions inside of Power Query to be able to do that work for you systematically. So let's do the first one, and again, I'm not going to write all of these out. I will probably put them in. I've already made a link to my GitHub repo, which you'll find in the description down below, and in there you'll find kind of the instructions on how to go and do this, which I've prepared for you. But for now, we're going to start it like this. So let's, for now, create a new source, and we're going to do a blank query, and we're going to open the advanced editor. I'm just going to make it a little bit bigger, and then through working with ChatGPT and other, let's say, other approaches, I came up with the following approach. So let me talk you through it real quick. So what this basically does is it says we're going to define a function with the work item as a number. Anytime you have, what I learned through my research is that anytime that you have this, it kind of creates a function. And you'll see each step is kind of explained. That's something ChatGPT does a great job of doing. So the first thing that it does is it fetches the document using a dynamic URL, and it's referring to the work item ID, which happens to be, of course, a column within the work items table. Then we record these fields and convert them to a table. And what we're doing is we do this dynamically, and then all of these are all those transformation steps that we were doing before, including what it doesn't do at this point is it doesn't do the final step, which is to, change it from HTML back into plain text, but we'll do that together so we can kind of see it happen. So this is the query. I'm just going to hit done because we'll see it run. And what happens is you basically get back here a parameter. So it's asking for a parameter and you're like, okay, what does this mean? So if I put in an example and I invoke the query, you'll see I get back the actual work item description for the work item number 3. But we don't want, that's not really helping us yet. So how do we actually include the details of this query back into the actual table? And this is where it's kind of genius. So if you add a column and then invoke a custom function, you can then pick the function and then it asks you what's the criteria that you're specifying that's used to populate that, like in a kind of loop. And I'm just going to change the column name to, let's call it rich text work item description. Okay, and you'll see it's just running through for each of those. All right, and it's returned back, one of them that has a description, just because right now, I've only got one of the work items in this project with a description in it. But we can quickly just do another one so we can kind of see it as it happens. You'll see that we now have an additional description there that we have for this one. So just to tidy things up, I'm going to quickly rename this to description for now. I wanted to go one step further because this is great. This answers the question that I got, but I thought it would be kind of cool to do some other stuff as well. So I'm quickly going to add as well for the acceptance criteria. I've shared that with everyone in the links in the description of the video. As well, the structure for this one, so you can obviously dynamically populate it with the information that you need. And again, we'll just quickly rename this to acceptance criteria, and we'll also add this as a custom column as well. And again, we can see it's giving a nice name to the column. So we've got the acceptance criteria too. But there was a question, and this was something actually that we'd done kind of in our team in the past, is there a possibility not just to get the description, but to also get like the latest comment, that's coming from the user story? Because what if we can see, or we could even filter, I think you can obviously extend this as in any way you'd wish to make it work for your requirements. But the question is can I also get this latest status, so I can even report the status of how stuff is going within the engagement or the work item that's being used? So I decided to pursue that as well and see if I could get that to work. The query is slightly different that we're using, so the function I should say. So again, we're going to start with the blank query, go into advanced editor. Again, I have it in the files, so you can take a look at that. It's slightly shorter because we're not doing all of the transposing that we did before. And you can then see here that I've got the structure of the get the comments. The API call is slightly different, so you can kind of see it here that there's it looks a little bit different, and it says to get the comments, and then you can see order by created date and take the top one. So you could do things like filtering it based on whether it starts with status or something like that, if you didn't want to pick up all of the comments that are being used. But I found this kind of fun. Again, you can see it adds it then as another function, which we're going to call here the latest comment. And we're going to add this as well. And what we've now got is we now want to obviously get all of this tidied up. So let's quickly just go through and do that. I'll speed up the video at this part so you don't have to watch it all, but I'll make it so you can see. I'm just going through and basically putting them all with that HTML to transform all of these into plain text. All right, and the last thing is obviously I don't want to keep the columns that I had that were used to get the information. So in the transformation steps, I can also get rid of these as well. So we're just tidying it up. So now we have, of course, the 3 new columns that we needed in the table. Let's quickly apply these here, so we can then look at them directly in the table. All right, so I'm just going to update this table, get rid of that one. And we're now going to just take everything from, we don't need to use that query anymore. We can take the description text, the acceptance criteria, the latest comment, and you can see we can now bring all of these across and just tidy it up a little bit. Just for folks, in case they're wondering, if you wanted to, the way that it converts the HTML in this example is pretty, let's say, it removes all of the formatting. So there are other approaches. I'll provide some links, in the description of how you can actually make the, it keep some of the details, for example, like bullet points and stuff like that. Like if you see here in this acceptance criteria for this user story, if I actually go to the example, you can see it has bullets in numbers. But again, because they're like a HTML element, it removes those. So it's something worth noting in terms of what you'd be doing. But now we've achieved this, so it's pretty cool. Let's go and just kind of make a new comment, because we said we wanted just the latest comment. So we're going to update some of these other user stories here. So we've got number 2 and number 3. So if I go back, and then we can see here where this one has got the we can even make it kind of bold and put some color on it, just to kind of make it a bit over the top. And then we can go to the other one here, which is number 6 ID, and we can say like subscribe. All right, subscribe and leave a comment. So yeah, don't forget to do that whilst you're here. Okay, and now if we go back to the Power BI dashboard that we've just developed, and we now hit refresh, you'll see that we now have that information there, and it's even kept the emoji. So pretty cool to see that. All right, friends, so let's just do a little summary of what we've covered in the video today. So the core concepts of this video was how can we actually get the description and other rich text fields from within Azure DevOps and populate them inside of Power BI. And what we did is, the first step we did was we basically used the OData query that we have used in an existing video to basically return the work items and their title and description. And then we initially used an online approach, which was to use a query, which was kind of where you could say it's hard coding the actual retrieval of the description field and other fields. And then how you actually, present that data back and use it. And actually using that example, I then was able to build some functions that we can then use to be able to, do all of those transformation steps dynamically on that list, so that we can then loop through all of those work items. We then put these into the same table as the work items table from OData. So we're kind of merging both the OData and the API queried information and presenting it all back. As I mentioned to you, I'm sharing this on my GitHub, which is linked in the description. And you can find the full page here with how to get the work item description function. And I've made sure, just to make sure, make sure you update it with your organization and project. and also that when you're referring to the work item ID, that it's you select the correct column to obviously correspond with that dynamic value that you want to pass from your data. And also treating things as numbers is important if it is a number, otherwise it won't render correctly. But all of those are there. I will add the HTML one that I realized that I haven't put in there as well. And yeah, I just hope you find this really useful. Thanks again for the comment that I got on the original video that inspired me to make this video. I hope you found it really helpful. For me, it was a great journey into learning something new, and I can see already the fact that I'll get to use this over and over again. I just finished a really big project at Microsoft, so I now have a bit more time, hopefully, to focus on sharing some of the learnings that I did within that project and creating a couple more videos here on YouTube. So that's your sign to make sure that if you're not already, that you subscribe and leave a comment down below to let me know if there's any other ideas and things you'd like me to work on within this area. And last but not least, if you don't forget already, don't forget to pay it forward. Take care. Have a good day.